It started with something small, almost too small to notice at first. The kind of inconvenience most people would shrug off as bad luck or coincidence. But for one homeowner, it was the beginning of a bizarre and costly feud that would spiral far beyond anyone's expectations. Every Tuesday morning, the garbage truck rolled through the quiet suburban neighborhood, collecting bins lined neatly along the curb. And every Tuesday evening, the same homeowner would return from work to bring his trash can back in. But one particular week, something was different. The bin was missing. At first, it seemed like a simple mistake. Maybe it had been placed further down the street by the garbage man, or perhaps a neighbor had moved it aside to make room for their own. The homeowner walked up and down the street, scanning for the familiar black plastic can, but it was nowhere to be found. He ended up borrowing space in another bin that week, assuming it was just a one-time inconvenience. But the following Tuesday, it happened again. The bin had vanished. By the third week, it was clear this was no accident. Someone was deliberately taking the trash can. Replacing it cost money, and each new can came stamped with the city's barcode and ID. Losing one wasn't just frustrating, it was expensive. The homeowner realized he was being targeted. Suspicion fell quickly on one neighbor in particular. She was the type who made herself known in every HOA meeting, the type who always had something to complain about. Her name was whispered with annoyance and rolled eyes by everyone who lived nearby. She prided herself on nitpicking rules, monitoring lawns, and filing petty complaints. She was the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, and her name was Karen. Karen had a long history of feuds with others on the street, from grass being half an inch too tall, to Christmas lights left up a week too long, to parking in front of her house. Even on public streets, everything was a violation in her eyes. And now, it seemed, she had found her newest obsession: trash cans. The homeowner began to notice little details. A trash bin at Karen's house looked suspiciously new. Its barcode sticker seemed recently placed, and the number had been scratched off, as if someone had tried to conceal its origin. When the homeowner checked more closely, he realized it looked exactly like the one he had lost. But without proof, nothing could be done, and Karen knew it. She smiled smugly at every HOA meeting, armed with complaints against anyone but herself. Yet behind that facade, she was orchestrating a bizarre game of petty theft. The missing trash can had started as an inconvenience, but soon it would become the spark for a battle that no one in the neighborhood would forget. The homeowner wasn't about to let Karen win, because what Karen didn't know was that her little stunt was about to cost her big. And so, with patience and planning, the homeowner prepared for the next week's trials. After weeks of frustration, the homeowner realized that ignoring the problem would only encourage Karen to continue her petty games. Each missing trash can meant more money out of his pocket and more satisfaction for her. But rather than confronting her outright, he decided it was time to outsmart her. The first step was patience. Karen was predictable, and like clockwork, trash day was her moment of opportunity. It wasn't difficult to figure out her pattern. The garbage truck passed early in the morning, and by midday, the bin would vanish from his curb. She never struck at night when cameras were more obvious, and she never acted on days when neighbors were outside. She was cautious, sly, and calculating, but she wasn't careful enough. The homeowner invested in a small security camera, one that could be mounted discreetly near his driveway. It was small enough not to draw attention, yet powerful enough to capture crystal clear footage of anyone approaching his bin. He angled it just right, ensuring the lens had a perfect view of the curb where his garbage can always sat. For days leading up to the next trash pickup, he tested the setup, making sure the motion sensor worked, checking the battery life, and rehearsing in his mind exactly how he'd catch her red-handed. Karen had fooled others before, but this time she wouldn't escape proof. Trash day arrived. The homeowner set his bin out at the usual time and went about his morning, resisting the urge to watch too closely. He knew Karen thrived on attention, and if she suspected he was monitoring her, she might hold back. Instead, he let the hours pass naturally, trusting the camera to do its job. By mid-afternoon, the moment came. The bin was gone again, but this time, the homeowner didn't walk up and down the street searching aimlessly. Instead, he rushed to check the footage. What he saw confirmed everything he had suspected. There was Karen, strutting down the sidewalk with feigned nonchalance, looking over her shoulder as she grabbed the bin and wheeled it toward her driveway. She was careful, but not careful enough. Every step, every glance, every moment was caught on camera. The satisfaction was overwhelming. Finally, undeniable proof. But the homeowner didn't rush to confront her. He knew that in HOA disputes, evidence wasn't just power, it was a weapon, and if wielded correctly, could turn the tables entirely. He spent the next few days planning carefully. Karen had always relied on the HOA to enforce her petty crusades, filing endless complaints against neighbors for even the smallest infractions. Now, with solid evidence, he could use the very system she abused against her. The plan was simple. Present the footage at the next HOA meeting. File a formal complaint and demand restitution for every stolen trash can. But he didn't stop there. He began compiling receipts for every replacement bin he had purchased. The numbers stacked up quickly, and once fines and penalties were. The night of the HOA meeting arrived, and as usual, the community clubhouse was packed with neighbors. These gatherings were always tense, filled with complaints about lawn heights, driveway cracks, and Christmas decorations left up too long. But tonight, there was a different energy in the air. The homeowner had been quiet for weeks, letting Karen dominate the meetings with her usual nitpicking. That silence was about to end. Karen entered the room with her usual smugness, clutching a thick folder of complaints. She relished her role as the self-appointed enforcer of the neighborhood, always quick to lecture and shame anyone who fell short of the HOA's long list of rules. She scanned the room, ready to present her latest list of grievances. But before she could, the homeowner raised his hand, requesting the floor. All eyes turned toward him, curious. He was not known for speaking at these meetings, which made his sudden involvement even more interesting. He began calmly, explaining how, for weeks, his trash can had gone missing immediately after garbage pickup. He described the costs of replacing them, the inconvenience of living without one, and the strange coincidence that always pointed back to the same time of day. At first, the room seemed sympathetic but skeptical. Neighbors had heard wild claims before. Then, the homeowner produced his evidence. On the screen at the front of the room, the video played. Clear, undeniable footage of Karen walking casually down the sidewalk, glancing around nervously, and pulling the trash can away from his driveway. Gasps filled the room. Karen's expression shifted instantly from smug confidence to pale shock. She fumbled through her folder, clutching it tighter as if it could shield her from the truth unraveling in front of everyone. The footage didn't lie. There she was, stealing a trash can in broad daylight. And not just once. The homeowner had compiled multiple clips across several weeks, each one showing the same pattern. The evidence was overwhelming. The HOA board sat stunned. Karen, their most vocal member, had been caught red-handed violating the very rules she so obsessively enforced. The hypocrisy was undeniable. She had spent years tormenting others for minor infractions, only to be exposed as a thief in front of the entire community. The homeowner wasn't finished. He laid out the receipts detailing every replacement trash can he had been forced to purchase. He explained how each one cost money and how the thefts created a cycle of unnecessary expenses. The total climbed into the hundreds, and when he proposed fines and penalties based on HOA regulations, the amount ballooned further. The room was buzzing now. Neighbors who had once been targets of Karen's complaints watched with satisfaction as she swerved. For once, the spotlight was not on them, it was on her. And the longer the footage played, the clearer it became that she had no defense. Humiliation should have been enough to stop her, but Karen was not the type to admit defeat. For years, she had ruled the neighborhood with her complaints, fines, and passive-aggressive comments. Losing face at the HOA meeting stung her pride more than anything, and instead of backing down, she doubled down. Within days, the homeowner noticed a retaliation begin. Karen started filing complaints again, this time directly against him. His lawn was too long. His car had been parked too close to the curb. His outdoor lights were too bright. Each one was trivial, petty, and clearly rooted in revenge. But each one required the HOA to process it, dragging the homeowner into constant correspondence and wasting his time. At first, he worried. If she was willing to steal trash cans, what else was she capable of? But then he realized something important. Karen's arrogance had blinded her. She believed she still had the upper hand, when in reality, every move she made only built a stronger case against her. The homeowner began to document everything, every false complaint, every frivolous accusation, every attempt she made to twist the rules. He kept records, photos, timestamps, and correspondence. Just as he had caught her stealing, he was now catching her abusing the system. Meanwhile, the HOA investigation into the TrashCan thefts continued. Several neighbors even came forward, admitting they too had noticed strange things happening with their bins. A couple recalled losing theirs entirely, while others remembered spotting Karen near their driveways when she had no reason to be there. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The homeowner submitted his growing pile of documentation to the board. He made it clear that Karen's actions weren't isolated. She was a serial offender, abusing the HOA system for her own ego. And with every complaint she filed, the evidence against her became more damning. But Karen wasn't done making mistakes. In her desperation to discredit him, she crossed a line she couldn't come back from. One evening, after trash pickup, the homeowner discovered his bin once again missing. He immediately checked his cameras, and sure enough, there she was, wheeling it away under the cover of dusk, thinking she was safe from prying eyes. What she didn't realize was that the HOA had already warned her. Any further violation would result in steep fines, not just restitution. And now, with this fresh footage, the board had no choice but to escalate the consequences. The next meeting was unlike any other. Instead of Karen leading the charge with her endless grievances, she found herself cornered. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and her history of targeting neighbors only made it worse. The board declared her guilty of multiple violations and announced that restitution would be required both for the stolen property and for the repeated harassment of her neighbors. By now, the neighborhood had turned against Karen. The once feared enforcer of the HOA had been exposed as a petty thief and a bully. Her smug confidence was gone, replaced with a desperate, cornered defiance. But the consequences of her actions were only beginning to unfold. The whole board, pressured by the overwhelming evidence and the growing discontent among residents, calculated the penalties. First came the reimbursement for every stolen trash can, not only for the homeowner who caught her, but for several other neighbors who reported similar thefts. The costs stacked up quickly, hundreds of dollars in replacement fees alone. Then came the fines. According to HOA regulations, property theft and harassment carried escalating penalties. Each violation could result in hundreds of dollars in fines, multiplied across the multiple documented incidents. Add to that the administrative fees for every frivolous complaint she had filed and wasted time she had caused, and the total soared higher. Finally, there were the legal expenses. The homeowner had filed a civil claim to recoup his losses and ensure that Karen's behavior was officially recorded. Between the HOA's penalties and the court's involvement, the bill reached into the thousands. When the numbers were finalized, Karen was ordered to pay nearly $10,000. For the homeowner, it was a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had endured weeks of harassment, petty theft, and endless complaints, but by keeping his patience and gathering evidence, he had turned Karen's own game against her. What she thought would be a small, invisible act of spite had snowballed into financial ruin. But Karen wasn't just losing money, she was losing her reputation. Neighbors who had once tolerated her or kept silent out of fear now openly avoided her. The whisper spread quickly. Karen the rule enforcer was actually Karen the thief. She became the subject of ridicule, her name synonymous with hypocrisy. The homeowner didn't gloat publicly. He didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. Karen, who had once weaponized the HOA to control others, was now under its strictest watch. Every action she took was scrutinized, every complaint dismissed, every violation penalized. What had started as missing trash cans ended with Karen paying a debt she could never have imagined. But there was still one more chapter left in the story, because while the financial punishment stung, what truly broke Karen wasn't the money, it was the loss of power. For the first time, she had no control, and that, more than the fines or restitution, was the punishment she could never escape. The homeowner, meanwhile, enjoyed a newfound peace. Trash day came and went without incident. His bin stayed exactly where he had left it, and for the first time in months, he felt free from Karen's constant shadow. But deep down, he knew Karen wasn't done entirely. People like her rarely learned their lesson easily. There would be whispers, attempts.
The weeks following the HOA's ruling were unlike anything the neighborhood had ever seen. Karen once the loudest voice at every meeting, had fallen completely silent. Her usual tirades about lawn edges, parked cars, and holiday decorations vanished. The woman who had thrived on confrontation now walked with her head down, avoiding the stares of neighbors she once controlled. But silence did not mean acceptance. Behind closed doors, Karen simmered with anger. She believed she had been unfairly targeted, that the homeowner had plotted against her, and that the HOA had betrayed her loyalty. In her mind, she was still the enforcer, the protector of the community, not the villain everyone now saw her as. She tried quietly at first to regain her footing. She sent letters to the board, demanding that her fines be reduced. She accused the homeowner of fabricating evidence, though the footage spoke for itself. She even tried rallying a few neighbors to her side, whispering that the punishment had been too harsh. But no one listened. The evidence had been too clear, her hypocrisy too blatant. The homeowner, meanwhile, enjoyed a peace he hadn't experienced in years. His trash can remained exactly where he left it after every pickup. No complaints arrived in his mailbox. No strange looks followed him around the neighborhood. It was as if a storm had finally passed, leaving behind clean air and calm skies. Yet the greatest shift wasn't just for him, it was for the entire community. Freed from Karen's constant scrutiny, neighbors began to relax. Lawns grew without fear of being measured, holiday lights stayed up longer, and cars parked wherever space was available. For the first time, the neighborhood felt like a community instead of a battlefield. And the homeowner's quiet victory became the symbol of that change. Karen's downfall wasn't just financial. Though the $10,000 debt weighed heavily on her, it was social. She became an outcast in the very place she had once ruled. People avoided her at the mailbox, crossed the street when she approached, and ignored her attempts to reassert herself. The HOA board, once her platform for control, now treated her with suspicion, carefully monitoring her behavior for any further violations. The story of the stolen trash cans became neighborhood legend. New residents were told the tale with amusement, learning quickly who Karen was and why no one took her seriously anymore. The lesson was simple. Those who live by petty rules and spite often fall by them too. For the homeowner, it was more than revenge. It was closure, a reminder that patience, evidence, and persistence always outshine arrogance and cruelty. Karen thought she had taken a trash can. What she didn't realize was that she had thrown away her credibility, her power, and ultimately, her place in the community. And that was worth far more than $10,000.